Okay, you've got a retirement plan. You've probably got a tax plan, maybe a financial plan. But do you have a health plan? Do you want to be able to travel anywhere in the world? Do you want to enjoy your grandchildren? You're going to love today's episode.
All right, grab your favorite mug. It's time for Coffee with Your Retirement Coach.
Welcome to Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. Today I've got an exciting episode, something that's really near and dear to my heart, something that changed my life. And we have a special guest who I've known for 30 years, who's helped me and my family make major, significant changes in our lives. And that is Kim Roberto. Kim, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Hey, Kim, do Americans have a health plan?
Well, it's funny when you ask someone that, they'll say, oh yeah, I have Cigna or Aetna or Blue Cross Blue Shield, but that is not a health plan. That's a sick plan.
Wow. That's a great way of looking at it, right? A matter of fact, health insurance today seems to be sick insurance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, you only really enter that system if you have a symptom, if something is going wrong.
You know, there's so much on that. Would you do me a favor, Kim, before we start talking about what you do, how about sharing with us a little bit about why you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the alternative health or the natural health space for a long, long time and always loved it. I always gravitated to nutrition and exercise, especially when I started having kids. I wanted to raise them the best way that I could. But then it really affected me with my own parents. So my mom got diagnosed with full-blown Alzheimer's, early onset at age 60. Wow. My dad, who was a vice president of General Electric by the time he retired, became her full-time caretaker.
Right.
For 14 years, she suffered with that horrible, debilitating disease. I can't describe how awful it is to look into your mom's eyes and there's nothing behind them.
Right.
It was really tough. And then right when he was done being her caretaker, right, because she passed away, unfortunately, 3 years later, almost to the day, my dad passed away. And it was a result of many different things, but he ended up in the hospital, and as a result of some negligence and malpractice, he was taken too early, if you will. So I was really affected by those two things, and it doesn't matter how old you are. When you become an orphan, you're still an orphan.
Right.
And I just vowed that I never want my kids to have to go through that. So my husband has a similar story with his dad. And we just, we don't have to eat well. We don't have to exercise. We get to, right? We get to.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it. I had an opportunity to go to a coaching program in Toronto, and they asked me a question. And I thought it was a cool question. And the way they asked it was, they said, we know that you know the answer to this, but just take a minute. As soon as you hear the question, give us your answer. Yeah. And the question was, how old will you be when you die?
Wow.
And nobody was ready for that. And I put an answer down and modified it because, one of the things I think about today is we can live longer, but we want to live better, not just longer, right? We want to, there's a book I finished not long ago called Live Long, Die Short. And the idea was live a healthy life, your entire retirement. And then when your time to go, it's time to go, not to go through the decline and the suffering that we see today.
Yeah.
What are the 5 essentials?
The 5 essentials of health are non-negotiables. So for us, it is core chiropractic, which is really focusing on the health of your nervous system, which if you guys don't know, it controls everything, bar none. Either directly or indirectly.
It's like the electrical system in a car,
like your electrical box, too, your breaker box. Mm-hmm. So that's number 1. Then nutrition. Mm-hmm. Then mindset is super important.
Wow.
Oxygen and exercise. And lastly, avoiding toxins.
Okay.
So those 5 essentials are really, if you combine those, you're talking about amazing, vibrant health.
There is so much information out there. And I tell people, it's kind of like what you know affects what you believe, which affects what you do. But what we're hearing a lot of times, the part that we're hearing, the no, is wrong. So how can we, who are not nutrition experts in that, how can we make modifications in our life that affect these things in a serious way, really an impactful way to help us live long and live better?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that answer can be multifaceted, but the first thing to do is if you look at things in changing your mindset, if we do what everyone else is doing, we're going to get what everyone else has. And what is that?
Diabetes.
Sickness and disease.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, we live in the greatest country ever known to man, but our healthcare system is broken.
Yeah.
So the very first thing you can do is understand that
Yeah.
and break free from that, right? So kind of pivot your whole, make a 180-degree turn and really start to take your health into your own like experience. Like you have to take control of your health.
You have to own that.
Yeah. And like we mentioned, your healthcare, your health insurance company doesn't know you, doesn't know what your health goals are, doesn't know where you are in life.
They're really a pharmacy and surgery system.
Those are their two options.
So what are the things though on a practical level? Because I think it's daunting. It's too much. So let's talk about each one of those essentials for a second. And you wrote a book on nutrition, which is fantastic. And this thing's a little dog-eared, but Maximize Living's nutrition plans. And this is a good start to understand the nutritional aspects. You have something you call the advanced plan. And so give us a little idea, if we were making a dietary change, something for the nutrition, the fuel in the car, what would be some of the things that you would say are simple that we can do?
Yep. I guess starting out with mindset, the whole thing with nutrition is our bodies were designed to be efficient running machines, right? And so I have this mantra, I have it on my blog that I keep recipes on. It's eat to live versus live to eat.
Right.
Right. And so many of us are just living to eat.
Right.
I love food more than the next guy.
Don't start meddling with me now.
But yeah, so we have to think about food as fuel for our high performance engine.
Right.
And that's really what it amounts to. And an easy analogy that I've been telling people lately, because it's so relevant, is I say, eat like my great-grandparents ate. Right. So great-grandparents, they lived off the land. They were exchanging eggs and chicken and meat, and the milkman came every day.
Right.
But they just tapped into what was then the food supply, which was much cleaner.
Right.
And at some point in time, all food was organic. Right. Now I'm relegated to the small section in the grocery store that's organic. But really the whole store should be organic.
Right.
And so now if you just tap into the food supply, the standard American diet, you're in deep trouble.
Called
You're in
SAD,
big trouble.
right?
Yes.
The SAD diet.
And it's very sad.
Somebody I was listening to recently was talking about our nutrition system or lack thereof. And he says, if a grocery store has a healthy section, what does it make the rest of the store?
Exactly. It makes no sense. And
look at what we're feeding. I mean, again, to be fair, we're not educated in my industry. We're not educated about money. We're taught to get a good job and go work for a company, but we're really not taught what to do with our money. And when it comes to growing up in the traditional American school, we're not taught really anything about our nutrition. And a matter of fact, if you look at the high schools that have their food supply, like what's in the high school, it's like, if you want to get diabetes, eat what's in the high school cafeteria.
it's basically what's in prisons.
Right.
It's the same.
And there's a reason for that, right? And it's low cost.
Right.
Right. So one thing I traded is sometimes I will, I found that, I'll just give you an observation. If I'm not eating well, I get used to it. I get used to not feeling good. And then when I eat well for a while and then I have a meal that's really off, even though I might enjoy the flavor, and there's a whole thing about the chemicals that are put in food to do that, but then I feel really lousy.
Right.
So
so
go
maybe
ahead.
let's talk about what are those good healthy foods, right?
Yeah.
What did our great-grandparents eat? And so it's really pretty simple, and I like to boil it down to, instead of worrying about my plates and food pyramids, there's really two. It's food by man and food by God, right? Natural versus unnatural or man-made. Okay, so let's talk about some of those good healthy foods like our great-grandparents ate. Clean, healthy meats. I mean, what we're doing to our animals in these confinement lots, and you would not believe what they're feeding these animals. I used to say grain-fed. It's not even that. It's stale candy. It's expired food. It's horrible things.
Right.
And so, cows were meant to roam pastures and eat grass. So let's focus on grass-fed beef and dairy, free-range poultry and eggs, wild-caught fish. I mean, these are all things that eat a natural diet. Our bodies know what to do with. And when they're not eating those things, those animals, they become sick and diseased. We eat the flesh of those animals, we become sick and diseased. I mean, it's common sense.
Yeah, and I heard somebody say something like, we are what we ate or something
that's
like
in
that.
there. That's actually in there.
Okay.
You are what you ate.
Oh, there you go.
So it sounds like it's wrong, but it's actually correct.
Well, yeah, that, and it is important. I think what's happened is because we're trying to save money sometimes or convenience, we're eating the worst thing. Tell me about your McDonald's.
Oh my gosh. I have that. So we'll stay on proteins, then we'll talk about the other macronutrients.
Yeah.
But I have a McDonald's meal that I purchased 16 years ago. We have it out on our table at our clinic right now. 16 years. And there's chicken nuggets, there's a hamburger, and there's fries. It looks the same as it did 3 days after we bought it.
It just shrunk.
It barely even shrunk. It's like the French fries look almost identical. And so what does that tell you? There's so many preservatives. It's such a non-food that bugs won't eat it. It's been out in the open.
Does it mold?
No mold. No bugs have gotten to it in 16 years. I went and I actually spent money and bought a new one.
I saw that.
About 30 days ago, and it's doing the same thing.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And people are eating that
Well,
sometimes
it's just
every day.
like I thought I bought some healthy bread, and not to get into that topic too much, but it was a bakery and it was sourdough, and I'm so excited about it. And I left it and I went away on vacation and came back and I saw it on the counter
experiment.
and I thought, oh my gosh. And you know what? It didn't change at all. And I thought, this wasn't as healthy as I thought it was.
I mean, that's really a good way to find out really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, that's proteins. And then now that you're on carbs, I'll talk about that in a second, but good healthy fats. That's the second thing.
But fats make you fat, don't they?
Oh my gosh. No, it's how your body processes fats and the type of fats that you're eating.
Right.
And so we are just eating all of these, and I'm sure it's a buzzword now, seed oils are in everything. And those are high in omega-6. They're highly inflammatory. So when we talk about like wanting to decrease inflammation and live a long, healthy
and tell us just
life,
for a second, most people probably know something about that, but inflammation, that's a real disease starter, right? That starts a spiral. Tell me a little bit about inflammation and what's happening.
It's like a chronic, just burning fire, right? That never gets put out. And it's at the root of every disease process known to man, right? So if you see diabetes, there's definitely inflammation. If you see cancer, there's inflammation. If you see heart disease, there's inflammation. And so we have to get that inflammation down. And one of the biggest culprits there is the type of food and especially fats that we're eating. And so by eating good quality fats, good quality proteins.
So what are good quality fats?
Yeah. So my favorite ones, coconut oil, avocados, avocado oil, olive oil, but you don't want to heat it up too much, nuts and seeds, and then especially fats from good quality animal products.
But we can't eat butter, can we?
Oh my gosh. Think about our great-grandparents. Butter. I mean, when we switched to margarine, did you know that they have to put yellow food coloring in margarine because otherwise it's gray?
Oh my God.
Because it's made in a factory. It's man-made when we could have butter straight from the cow.
So I got to tell you, I hadn't had a baked potato in a long time.
Oh man.
And we were at a barbecue place and I decided, you know what, I'm going for it. They have the big, massive baked potatoes. And I loaded that puppy up. I had everything in it. And then I looked and saw that they had margarine. And I said, can I get butter? She goes, that's right there. I said, well, that's not it.
Yeah.
She says, I think we've got some in the kitchen. Let me go get that. And she came back with a big tube, and it was a tube of margarine. And I said to her, and this is no joke, I said, no, butter. I said, I can't eat that. She goes, not kidding now. I don't think they make that anymore.
Oh my goodness.
I think I've got to carry my own like sea salt, mineral salt, and butter now.
I do. You should look at my purse right now. But yeah. And so, I mean, it just gets back to that. What is natural versus what is unnatural? When you're eating margarine, that is highly inflammatory.
Right.
And so we cover the proteins, we cover the fats, and then is the other macronutrient, carbohydrates.
Right.
And this is where so many people go astray. Like people are eating way too many refined carbohydrates and sugar. And sugar, when you think of sugar, you should think automatic inflammation.
Sugar's the devil, right?
Yes. And people say, well, I don't eat a lot of sugar.
Right.
But bread turns to sugar. Rice turns to
yes.
sugar. Like as soon as your saliva hits it, it starts turning to sugar. And so the average now, people are eating like 33, I think it is, teaspoons of sugar a day. And you wonder where it comes from. It's in bread, it's in crackers, it's in yogurt, it's in fruit juices, it's in coffees.
And it's not always
everything.
Just regular cane sugar either.
No, high fructose corn syrup, especially in things like sodas and snacks.
A lot of kids' foods, right?
all the
so
kids' foods.
we're loading these children up in the morning, trying to get out the door with processed foods that have a lot of these sugars in them, and then we send them to school, and then they end up on ADD medication, and they're running around, but they're going through that whole sugar thing. And now talk about children and diabetes. What's happening there?
Oh my gosh. It used to be called, type 2 used to be called adult onset.
Right.
And now it can't even be called that because so many children are contracting or getting diagnosed with that. And it's like our children get the worst of the food supply, right? Think about a kid's menu when you go to a restaurant.
Right.
What's on it? It's all the same.
It's
Chicken
the
nuggets,
worst stuff,
burgers,
right?
fries.
Right.
And so I tell people, like, just order off the adult menu.
Right. Split it with one of the kids, right? Do something, right?
Right. Okay. But even for older people, I mentioned my mom had Alzheimer's. When you think about good quality fats, your brain is made up of 60% fat.
We could go down such a path here because we're talking about all these statins and all of these things, that the concepts behind fats. And again, I don't want to get in over my head here, but I've read a lot. I've read several books just on statins, and it's unreal the conflicts and controversy over some of these things. And I'm a big believer in being a student, not a follower. So talk to us a little bit. A lot of us enjoy eating out. And, in America, sometimes sitting around the table is our entertainment. What can we do if we're eating out and we want to stay with a more healthy diet? What can we do?
Well, my husband and I are very social people, and so we do that. Now, I will say you can't control the ingredients all the time at a restaurant.
Right.
And, they're using microwaves, which I don't own in my own home. And they're using seed oils, most likely. So you have to do the best you can.
Okay.
But we are the kings and queens of substitutions. Like the When Harry Met Sally, that's us. That's us. But we're paying for it, right? And if restaurants aren't going to accommodate that, then you may want to go to a different restaurant.
Right.
So there aren't a lot of restaurants that you can really go to confidently. There's a handful, especially in the local area, that I know I can go to.
Right.
But, we have the fast food you want to avoid. But then there's these glorified fast food restaurants that are just fast food, but you're sitting down.
Right.
Right. And being served. Like
the nutritional value is about the same.
Yeah. And I won't mention names, but you
Yeah.
guys know hopefully who they are.
Yeah.
But you just have to do the best you can. So my best advice is look at the menus before you go out to eat. See if they have vegetables on the menu.
Yeah.
You can substitute them in and out.
Right.
It shouldn't be
I do that
no
all the
big deal.
time.
Right.
Especially I love broccoli and I love asparagus and Brussels sprouts. And of course, as a kid, I would never eat any of that stuff.
Right.
But and I think one of the things the Bible talks about is you have not because you ask not. So in the restaurant, I ask.
Yeah. All they can say is no.
Right.
And you may get upcharged for it.
Right.
That leads
$2.
Me,
I mean.
That leads me to another concept that I wanted to mention early on, and that's, eating healthy and doing all these things may cost you a little bit more. That's 100% true.
Yeah.
And you're in this business. You're going to pay for your health one way or another.
One way or another.
You're going to pay for it
That's
on the front end.
That is so true.
Paying $2 extra for your meal, or on the back end when you're buying medications, you're going to the hospital.
Well, you know what? If you
disease.
travel at all outside of the U.S., one of these things you'll find out is the U.S. seems to be in a competition to how much food they can put on your plate.
Yep.
You go to these other countries and you get half the amount of food.
Right.
And if you're eating in a reasonable pace, it's satisfying. I think what's happened here is we've just gotten the habit of gorging ourselves a lot of times. So one thing I try to do sometimes if we're eating out, in that I try to take half of it home. I try to divide some stuff up right away.
Right.
But it's harder. It is a lot harder outside than it is inside your home. But even inside your home, I've got something, like if it gets in the house, I'm eating it. So I've got to keep it out of the house.
Right.
So what are some other, let's talk just for a minute about, so we've talked a little bit about the nutrition. There's so much more that we could do here, but I think you simplified it and say there's really not 1,000 kind of foods. There's basically two foods. If I understand it right, God's food, which is more natural, closer to the earth, right? The beginning of the product, not the end. And then there's man food, which is all the processed stuff, the cheaper foods that you can buy a lot more in bulk that have the problem of creating the insulin resistance and some of those kind of things.
Yep.
Okay.
And we didn't even get into a big one because people are realizing that maybe I should avoid sugar. The artificial sweeteners are lumped into that man-made category, and I can't tell you how dangerous those things are. So it's just focus on eating clean. That's a popular term, but you can really put everything through that filter.
Right.
Is this man-made? Is it natural? And make your nutrition decisions based on that.
So let me make a suggestion that people consider this, and I'd like your opinion on it. So I started reading a lot about gut health and the ecosystem inside our body, which is, again, a whole episode if we wanted to do it.
Yep.
But one of the things I noticed is if I'm eating good for a period of time, it's almost like if you fast. So I'm a big believer in fasting, and if I eat well, then my gut bacteria develops according to what I'm eating, and you crave eating well. And so there's a little bit of going on right between the what we're eating and what we crave. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It's amazing that the body is so infinitely intelligent, and it's always doing the right thing for the right reason all the time. But there's this phenomenon where your body will crave the things that you shouldn't have, or the things that you're intolerant or have an intolerance to. It happens frequently, especially you see it in kids.
Yeah.
They'll crave the things that they shouldn't have,
Right.
right? And that's because your ecosystem, like you said, your microbiota is so delicate and so fragile. And even taking one round of antibiotics decimates your entire microbiome. And so we have to be, and people will, eat yogurt, let's say, because they know there's probiotics in there, but there's also a lot of sugar. So it kind of mitigates the
So what
benefits.
are some good things? I hear a lot about, fermented foods and that. So
That's the best thing.
So what are
Nutritionally-
some ones that we could pick up at the grocery store and make on our own?
Yeah. And it's funny because cultures around the world always seem to have something fermented with their meal because it helps you digest, absorb, and assimilate it. But things like kimchi, things like sauerkraut, kefir, you want to make sure there's not a lot of sugar in it. Those are the big ones. And you can either make them at home or they're readily available. You just have to check ingredients. And those are really great to have as kind of like a condiment with any of your meals.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, that is a great idea, and something that is an easy fix for us rather than buying a lot of pills and supplements and that. We can do it with food, right?
And sometimes people are even doing more harm than good when they're taking a probiotic, because even if it's a good probiotic, you don't even want an overgrowth of good strains of any one good strain. So we do a lot of nutrition testing in our clinic, and I can't tell you how wrecked people's guts are. Every single person I test has some gut issue.
So I think another one, in the 5 essentials, we talked a little bit about chiropractic, very basic, but the whole electrical system, if it's broke, then the light doesn't come on, the organ doesn't work right, blah, blah, blah. The nutrition, the fuel that keeps the engine running, and you wouldn't put crap in your car. Why do you put crap in your body? Part of it has to do with this, this microbiome that we were talking about a little bit. Let's talk just a minute about physical exercise, because I'm going to tell you, when Fred, your husband, Dr. Fred, started talking with us, boy, a light bulb went on for me. And I used to think, well, if you're really going to be healthy, you got to spend more time in the gym. Like I got to be in the gym for a long time. Talk a little bit about fitness and some easy things that we could do. Now, our audience, a lot of our audience is 50 plus. They're approaching retirement.
Me too.
Or I'm getting close to 50 too. But what can we do? What are some easy things that we can do? What would you recommend a novice, somebody who's not been exercising, what can they do to get started that they can really do?
Yeah. I mean, anything is better than nothing, right? Any kind of movement. And our bodies were designed for a certain amount of movement every single day. It's a genetic requirement. When we don't do it, we are flipping those genetic switches off to a dysfunctional state. And so many people have become sedentary, and it's like this snowball that just gets worse and worse and worse. But, conventional advice in exercise, in nutrition, you need to be suspect of it. Like you said, what we've been told for all these years may not be exactly right. And so for the last 3 decades, my husband and I, he's a mad scientist when it comes to this stuff, has focused on high intensity, short duration exercise. I mean, we're talking about minutes a day. My workout today, this morning, was 8 minutes. And so, and high intensity is different for everyone, right? So the idea is to get your heart rate up, to get your lungs pumping.
Do what you can do.
Exactly. And so, and for people that are over 50, we see this all the time in our clinic. Mobility and flexibility are huge issues. And when you lose that mobility, that's when you have falls and hip fractures and all of these things that set the spiral under control. And you know this, like, what's the number one reason for bankruptcy in America?
Health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Medical bills. Medical bills. So one of the best things that you can do is just move your body. So like
So
mobility.
you don't need to buy a gym membership. You don't need to buy a lot of fancy equipment. What you need to do is move your body. And I think, when we look at all the longest lived people, they normally live on terrain that requires them to continue to exercise. Yeah. And again, I'm fascinated about this, but I was listening to Dr. Peter Attia's talk, and he said that if you're 65 and older and you fall and break a hip, you have a 15% chance of dying that year.
That's right.
It's unbelievable.
That's right.
And he also mentioned, which I found fascinating, and why this exercise doesn't have to be, you don't have to look like Charles Atlas, so to speak, but, grip strength and dementia. And then I was listening to Dr. Gundry talk the other day, and he said that women who exercise reduce their chances of Alzheimer's by 90%.
Yes.
This body, mind, brain, it's unbelievable how connected they are. You can't everything affects everything else.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why the 5 essentials aren't just in a vacuum. Like diabetes doesn't care that you didn't know that processed carbs were bad for you. Cancer doesn't care that you did the wrong thing. It's going to happen to you if you're not following these.
So you're moving one way or the other. You're moving towards health or away from health, right?
Yep.
So I had something come to me when I really got turned on to this, and I got turned on to it young, but I didn't always live it. I live a lot more of it now because I love skiing, scuba diving, travel. And I was thinking about this and praying one day, and it was like the Lord led me. He says, you got 2 paths ahead of you.
Yep.
And one path is, I'm old, I need help. And the other path is, I'm old, I can help.
Yes.
And your decisions that you're making. And it doesn't really matter. I think that one of the problems that we have is we compare a lot of times, and so it stagnates some people. So let's go really back quickly to exercise and saying, all right, so I've been sitting on the sofa, a couch potato, and I want to get started. Can you give us a couple of things that we could actually do? Like, what would you do if that had been you?
Yeah, sometimes it's a matter of walking to the mailbox and back.
Okay.
The next day, maybe you walk back and forth to the mailbox twice.
Okay.
And a great thing to test your mobility is to get down on the ground and get back up.
Yeah.
Right? And even better yet, lay on your back. Can you get back up? And better yet, can you do it without using your hands? Right. That becomes more and more difficult. So if you're finding that you can't do that, that's a sign that you need to get moving a little bit more. So start in a chair, sit in a chair, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. Use the handles if you need to. But just start moving your body.
Right.
Stand up, see if you can touch your toes. See how far you can get to touching your toes.
Right.
Do those up and down bends a couple times. Start somewhere, and then you'll find that you gain more mobility. And especially if there's an injury.
Yes.
It's so important to do rehab.
Right.
And just use exercise as a rehabilitation.
Right.
And so my husband is great. We do this all the time in our clinic, is giving people modifications for different movements. And it's not just about cardio. I get women all the time, osteopenia, osteoporosis.
Right.
You have to be doing strength
You
and
have to
resistance
do that.
training. Yes.
As a matter of fact, I think women need it as much or more than men.
Absolutely.
Especially for whatever reason, estrogen or whatever that causes the issues with the bones and all that.
Yep.
And so don't think you're going to look, you're going to start lifting weights or doing bands or something. All of a sudden you're going to look like Charles Atlas either. But that leg strength, that core strength, that ability, and it's recovery. If you don't have that, I know my clients who are healthy and well and exercise, who end up having some accident or injury, they recover.
Yeah.
And those that don't, it's like a decline that keeps on happening.
Right.
So we owe it to ourselves and our family.
Yep.
Another thing that I thought about as I looked at this idea that, I want to have good relationships and I want to have economic means to be able to do things. But then I also have to have the function of fitness. I have to have the capacity to do things. So this is, I think, really important stuff, things that we don't really spend a lot of time on. To me, it appears in America, for whatever reason, and don't let this be you, that we have to have something tragic occur, something devastating occur, and then we try
a wake-up
to the wake up. So let's pretend that we've already got it. Let's pretend that we already are being infected and we're already, have the ailments. We already have, we're one step away, and start making that micro movement, that little bit of change. This is so helpful to talk about this stuff. Is there any other key things as we start to wrap up today, and I'm going to have you come back and get into in depth in some of these areas. So what are some other things, maybe a part of the 5 essentials that you think we should think about?
Here's a big one that we haven't touched on yet, and that is toxins.
Okay.
We live in the most toxic environment ever known to man, the most toxic planet ever to have existed.
Right.
Everything, the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the products we use. So think about what you're exposed to all day long. Our cleaning supplies. Your skin is your largest organ. Whatever you're putting in and on your skin is getting absorbed. These toxins a lot of times all toxins are fat soluble. So your body will hold on to them. They'll encapsulate them in fat so that weight loss resistance comes into play. Your body doesn't want to release those toxins back into your body. So we have to clean up our environment, the water you drink. We have to keep our air pure and sufficient, right? And so it's such a big issue. And these toxins, things like heavy metals, accumulate in your brain. That was one of my mom's issues. She had tremendous amounts of dental work done. Amalgam fillings are mercury fillings. And there were whole pockets of her brain missing that look exactly the same as a mercury toxic brain.
Wow.
So we have to not only avoid these things going forward, but detoxify them. Right. And we have to clean up our environments in order to do that. It's a huge problem. And people don't make that connection with how those toxins are affecting their health. It's a big, big issue.
You know, I heard you guys talk one time, and this picture stays with me, that everybody has a tub.
Yeah.
And people's tub fill up differently. Some people have a big tub. Some people have a little tub. Tell us a little bit about that, what that means.
So you think of your body as like a bathtub, like you said, or a bucket. You can think of each one of your little cells as a bucket. These toxins will drip in slowly over time, and they bioaccumulate. And if your body can't keep up with detoxifying them, some are harder than others. And everything's fine, right? Everything's fine. Think about a bathtub. It's filling up. It's filling up. It's only a problem when that last drop of water hits and it overflows. Right. And we see this. It used to be like people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, their buckets would overflow and they'd start to have symptoms. Now it's happening at earlier and earlier ages. And when we think about things like autoimmune disease, direct links to toxins, cancer, direct links to toxins and exposures to toxins. Right. So it's a big, big problem. And the older you are, the more exposures you've had. So it becomes even more of an issue.
Well, Kim, I wish we could go more in depth into some of this stuff, but I hope you've opened other people's eyes like you and your husband have mine. You are such a resource. You and your husband's business has been invaluable to our family. And I tried to show you appreciation. I've referred a lot of folks to you guys. You know, I know that if you think about your career, if you think about things, if you're doing like everybody else is, don't expect better results.
Right.
And unfortunately, we've gradually gotten ourselves into this trust factor where we're trusting that our doctor knows. We're trusting, and I'm not saying don't listen to your doctor. Absolutely listen, but go get 2 or 3 doctors. And one of the things I look at is, how does my doctor look? How does his staff look? Are they living it? One thing I love about you and Dr. Fred is you guys live this 24/7.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys are in. You are passionate about it, and it shows, and it's the impact. You've got a thing in your office, a clear box, a glass box, and it's
Health
filled
Freedom
with.
Box.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, we call it our Health Freedom Box. And so, again, we never tell people what to do. We cannot tell people to go on or off meds. But when they start to take charge of their health and do all these things that we're talking about, their body naturally heals, and so they're able to come off of medicines or get rid of their walker or whatever the case may be. So
it's
really
funny.
Cool.
Again, I was hearing somebody talk the other day, and they said, all medications are toxic at some
Oh,
level.
100%.
So you take a medication, and then because of that, all the side effects, which are the last few seconds of every commercial, then you got to take another medication because you got this, you got to have that.
Yep.
And how many times have we seen people who are on different medications that are conflicting? I'll stop with this because you talked about your mom and dad. My mom lived to almost 96, and she lived long and died short. She died in 3 months.
Yes.
But she'd only been a doctor one other time. Part of this is good genes, but what's funny about it is her mom died of heart disease at 46 or 47. Her dad died at 59. My mom says of heartbreak. My mom was 12 when her mom died. Right. All 3 sisters lived into their 90s.
That's amazing.
But they did come up in the era where the food you ate wasn't filled with chemicals and all that. And my mom loved to bake, so she she had a sugar tooth and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
yeah.
But I was so thankful that she got to live so long with a sharp mind, witty, right up to the end.
That's how it's supposed to
and
be.
that's how it's supposed to be. So I challenge us to do that. You know, you're willing to make investments in different things. Like maybe you've got a great car, great home, great yard, all this kind of stuff.
Who cares?
So if you're struggling, in my mind, one of the greatest things that you could do, find the right healthcare professionals, find the right physical trainer. If you don't know how to exercise, don't get hurt. Remember, Fred would talk about, you know, we don't get injured.
Right.
You know, we're technique people.
Right.
We do the right technique. And if you don't know how to do that, pay a little bit of money, at least for the first few months, to learn how to exercise
That's
and do
right.
right. Make these incremental changes. You've been such a blessing. Thank you for coming and sharing
I love
this
being
stuff.
here.
I love this part of our business where we get to share professionals who are passionate about what they do and knowledgeable like Kim. And Kim, if people want to get a hold of you and your clinic, how can they get a hold of you?
The easiest way is just go to West Cobb, COBB, chiropractic.com. All of our info is there.
All right. Sounds great. Thank you, everybody. It's been fantastic. And thanks for staying coachable.
We hope you enjoyed today's show, but you may have questions for our coaches, and they can be emailed at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If you know someone that needs to hear this episode, we encourage you to share it. As a reminder, the content of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. On behalf of our coaches, we want to thank you for listening and for being coachable.
Yeoman's Consulting Group, a registered investment advisor YouTube channel based in Marietta, Georgia. We strive to provide comprehensive wealth management services for every stage of the journey. This platform is solely for informational purposes and is not offering advisory services or sales of securities. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Comments by viewers or recognitions are no guarantee of future investment outcomes and do not ensure that a viewer will experience a higher level of performance or results. Public comments posted on this site are not selected, amended, deleted, or sorted in any way. If applicable, certain editing of personal, identifiable information and misinformation may be deleted. The opinions expressed herein are as of the date of publication and are subject to revision due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass. This podcast was filmed at Podium Studios at Marietta Square. Grow your business with turnkey, professional quality podcasting, live streaming, and online events. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about anything. Just come in and record. Learn more at thepodium.studio. Step up to the podium.